Okay, welcome to Windsong. We are in April. This is our fourth session, and this is the sunrise block. After next month, there is a beautiful, amazing surprise. So get these sunrise blocks done. We're going to start by doing half square triangles today, okay? There are going to be 3 different half square triangles that we do. We are going to do fabric 6 and fabric 5. You'll be making 8 of these. This is fabric 5 and fabric 13. This is fabric 10 and fabric 3. And you will be making 4 of these. Okay? And the way we do half square triangles is we're going to start with 5-inch squares. This is fabric 3 and fabric 10. We're going to line them on top of each other. You're going to mark your center diagonal. You're going to sew a 1/4 inch on either side, and then we are going to cut this apart. Okay. You are going to want to press to fabric 5 and fabric 13. So there are different instructions on where you want to press to. Okay, but in this case, we are pressing to fabric 10, the dark, and then we are going to trim these up to 4.5 by 4.5. This is, again, my favorite ruler. You are going to line up your diagonal on your seam. You're going to trim 2 sides. You're going to flip that over, and you're going to trim 2 sides. So on this, when you start with the 5 and trim to the 4.5, there is actually very, very little that you need to trim, but you really do need to trim to get a 4.5 by 4.5. Okay? So on these, you're all going to press to the dark, to the fabric 10. Fabric 6 and 5, you're going to press to fabric 5. But on fabric 5 and 13, you're going to press half to fabric 5 and half to fabric 13. You're going to take all your half square triangles. You're making 4 blocks this month, and you're going to sew them together. You are going to sew 4 of these units, and then you are going to sew 4 of these units. Okay? So when you do this, your fabric 5s are in the middle, your fabric 5s are in the middle, and then you're going to add a number 10. 1/4 inch seam allowances, and once you have these units, you get to put them to the side. Okay? So that's your half square triangle units. Now we're going to make square and a squares. We've done square and a squares before. Start with a 3 3/8 middle. You're going to fold that in half. You have triangles cut from a 3 1/4 inch square that you've cut in half. You mark your centers. You lay them on there. Sew and press out, right? And then you're going to do that again with the other sides. So you have, oh, there's that one. Then you're going to put these on the sides here, sew, and press out. And when you press out, we are oversized. So you're going to take your trim tool. You're going to line up the black lines on the horizontal and diagonal. And you're going to trim to 4.5 by 4.5. I love the ease of this ruler. Anytime I have to do a 4.5 by 4.5 square, it is awesome. You have a square and a square unit. You will make 4 of these. Then you are going to take our next unit, which are strip sets. These are strip sets. These are originally 2.5 inch strips. They were half a width of fabric, 21 inches long. You're going to sew fabric 12 to fabric 8. After you sew fabric 12 to fabric 8, On your second strip set, you're going to sew fabric 3 to either sides. So you'll have 2 of these, 2 of these. Sew 2 of these together, put it on the side. After you get this, you're going to sew fabric 3 to the top and the bottom. They are going to ask you to press this seam in the middle open. And on this, they're going to ask you to press this seam to the middle. I pressed wrong. I pressed poorly. Okay, so this is to butt your seams later on. This is pressed open. Your fabric 3 is pressed to the middle. Once you have your strip sets, you are going to cut 2.5 inches. So your first cut is to square off your end and to cut off your selvage. The way you cut strip sets is you find a seam that you're going to reference. Don't use the corner of your strip set, because if this seam is off and this seam is off and this seam is off and this seam is off, if you're coming from this corner, it becomes problematic more and more going on. If you line your cutting reference up with the middle on a seam, half of the funkiness ends up on the top, half of the funkiness ends up on the bottom, and you'll get better cuts. So I'm going to trim that off before I start cutting my 2.5 by 2.5 inch pieces. Now, when I do that, I'm again using this as my center seam as my reference. I'm going to line up. I'm using the white line. Hopefully you can see that really well. Line up my white line on the middle and line up the 2.5 line on this side to cut straight rectangular pieces. Okay? And like any cutting, things can get wonky, right? And we have to square up. If you use 2 references, you're going to keep better rectangular, straighter pieces, okay? If you're going along and you notice that even if this line is straight and this line is starting to get really crooked, turn it around, square it up, and then redo more pieces. So I've cut 2 of those, and I'm going to cut 2 of the smaller ones, line up on the center seam, my 2.5 line. That way I get good rectangles. Now I'm going to take my square on square. I'm going to put the 2 sides, the square on square, with the reds on opposite corners. Okay? So red on the bottom, red on the top. Sew this together. When I put the top and the bottom, you want the red squares adjacent to each other. Okay? So when you go around, green, red, red, green, green, red, red, green. Okay? That is the center square that we want. Once this is done, we are going to put our half square triangles on the side. For each of the blocks, we are going to have a 2-piece half square triangle and then a 3-piece half square triangle. You are going to put the dark in one corner and then match the dark in the other corner, so the darks make a strip going this way. And these are your lighter pieces. Okay? You are going to be making 4 of these. 1, 2, 3, 4. These are really fun. They're really gorgeous. And next month, we'll use these to put together with the center of the quilt to the first section. It's going to be awesome and beautiful, and we'll see you then.